And I hope the people that listen to this podcast understand that this is not a get rich quick scheme. Like, this is real estate. It takes time. Like, I certainly like the stock market, and I've even got a little bit of crypto, but the vast majority of my wealth is in real estate. Through the history of time, people need a place to live.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today, I'm here with Andrew Postell. Andrew's a 20-plus year real estate investor, uses the buy and hold strategy and the BRRRR Method. Andrew, as I mentioned, I'm much more interested in letting you tell your story in your words. But first, I just want to say thank you. Thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for taking the time out to connect. I really do appreciate having you here.
Thank you, Jason. It's a big honor for me to be here. I really enjoy your podcast, your show. It's an honor to be here, and I hope that your guests are pretty cool. I love hearing everybody's story. Hopefully, this guest won't disappoint.
I'm sure you won't. Why don't we just start with your background, your story, kind of where you got started, and your journey in real estate?
Oh, sure. Okay. So, when I was a kid, I had two loving parents, and that's better than most. We didn't have any money, but we did move around a lot. My dad's job required us to move around a considerable amount. I feel like I might have moved 18 times by the time I was 18. And what my dad did, every time we moved, we sold the home that we were in to buy the next home.
Okay.
He didn't know anything. You were just a kid. But my uncle, he moved quite a bit too, but he kept his homes when he moved. Now, as a kid, maybe your lives are similar in the family. Maybe you don't even notice it. But as I got older, I continually noticed that my uncle's life was a little bit different than ours.
Sure.
Jason, when my uncle retired, he retired with 7 properties. That's it, just 7 properties. And he's fine forever. He's fine. And my dad, he's still alive, but his life is very different. So I'm glad I learned the lesson early on, that I saw that real estate did something different in my own family. I'm glad I had an example to learn about it. But that's what got me interested in it. I had no idea it would transform my life the way it has, though.
Yeah. I'm sure. Yeah, those early examples. You don't necessarily know all that was involved, and certainly, the previous generations, real estate might have looked a little bit different for them, and yeah, if we all could own 7 properties that were purchased 30 or 40 years ago, you're in a good place. But but that doesn't mean, I think sometimes people hear those stories and they're like, well, I didn't buy anything 40 years ago. But the point is, you can use those as lessons and then sort of apply it to your life. In if it looks differently, that's fine. So what did you do? That gave you the bug, or the at least the introduction, and what was your steps into real estate?
Yeah, I feel like part of this has to go along with, like, even though I had a loving family, I barely graduated high school. I was not a very good person. But then I joined the United States Marine Corps, and it got me back on the straight and narrow. So I did have some good things that were instilled in me early in my life, but it took something extreme to get me back on track. I'm hope that nobody has to do those things. One day maybe we'll be in a world where we don't even have to have a military, but that's not the world we live in. And that's not how I would have been successful. If I would have gone from high school to college, I would not have made it. The Marines helped me become successful. So when I was in college, I went through the Marine Corps. I got out honorably discharged. They paid for my college. Goodness, they paid for it. What a great blessing to have.
Yeah.
But while I was in college, I bought a $50,000 cinder block home and I house hacked it. Now, we didn't call it house hacking. There was no such term then,
Yeah.
but I rented out the rooms, right?
Yeah.
So from that $50,000 home, that's what helped me transform into what I have now. Just that one little $50,000 home that I used a first time home buyer grant to help me purchase.
Yeah. It's fun. It's funny that you mentioned that you were house hacking before it was called. It's when I first heard that term, I had the same. I was like, wait, this is just having roommates, right? Like it's just, it's like, oh yeah, I did that for sure. I did that because I wasn't able to afford when I bought
Yeah.
my first house. There was no chance I was going to afford it on my own. So yeah, I had roommates, and it's a phenomenal way to get started in on in real estate, whether it's as a chosen path into real estate investing or just because you want to cut down on your likely biggest expense in life. So it's a really a smart starting point. From there, kind of what was your journey? That first, when was that? How like timing wise?
In the year 2000.
Okay,
So that
man,
was the first one. That's the 20 years ago. Yeah.
yeah, we have lived parallel lives. Although I did not serve in the military, so thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you.
But I also bought my first house in 2000. So
Mm.
um, that did you buy that house with the intent to sort of turn it into a real estate career, or was it just something that because for me it was like, oh, I want to own, but this is the only way I can do it.
Yeah, it was absolutely out of necessity. Okay. I didn't realize that there was such a thing as a real estate career or that real estate could be an investment platform to change your life. None of those things were even there. I took the home though as I bought it and I was like, hey, I'm going to rent out the rooms. And when I move, I will continue to rent it after I move out. So from there, I moved to New York City and I used it as my rental. So I bought it, a $50,000 home with a first time home buyer grant. Like, I almost came out of pocket nothing because I didn't have anything. I was a college student. I did work. I worked at a bar, but I didn't have a career or a job yet. But later, I realized that property could help me turn into more. But Jason, I tried to learn this. There was no internet like there is now. The internet was barely a thing. There was no website, Beggar Pocket. There was nothing like this. There were no real estate meetup groups. I actually went to the library to check out a book on real estate investing, and I got it, and it was 8 years old. It was already outdated. So when you tried to learn, there were so many roadblocks in your way that you almost had to do it blindly, with mistakes that got you to the next level. But my second property, I bought for $7,000, 7,000, and it was a BRRRR home. I did the BRRRR method. There was no such thing as that acronym, but I bought it for 7,000, and that was my first true rental. Like I never lived in that one. I just bought it as a rental, and just went from there.
In with that Burr house, did you I guess do all the R's? You renovated and did the Burr strategy completely? What were the num? I mean, people are going to say like you can't get a house for $7,000 now. May or may not be true, but what walk us through kind of how that deal looked for you, because I do think starting somewhere what sounds small but maybe wasn't small at the time. I just kind of what did that look like for you?
Yeah, this was my life savings. Okay, so I bought the property for 7, and I even went into it with the mentality of like, hey, if you make a mistake, at least it'll be a small mistake. So I bought it for 7. I put 23,000 into it, and after I was done, it was worth 30. So 7 plus 20, I could have just gone and bought a $30,000, but
Right.
I had
Right.
no idea. I didn't know what after repair value was. I didn't know how it related to my purchase price, the rehab. I didn't know how to estimate rehab. None of it. But then I had a $30,000 rental home
Mm-hmm.
that I rented for $650 a month. No lender would lend on it. No property manager would even step a foot into that neighborhood. It was pretty tough. And Jason, if you went to that neighborhood today, you'd buy homes for 40,000 right now, 20 years later. There's no
Wow.
appreciation in this war zone type of a neighborhood.
Yep.
But my home was a good home for people. Like in a place where there was a lot of nasty homes and terrible apartments, they had a good choice. And that's why it was always rented. People paid on time, and I was profitable even with such a tough neighborhood and a small home. It worked. It
Yep.
worked.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, even just from a numbers standpoint, right? If you're all in at 30,000 and you're selling or you're renting it at 650 a month, like that's 2+% on your the 2% rule or whatever. You're over that. So that's really that's very hard to find today to be able to purchase and have something sort of renovated for an amount that you then can rent it out for even 1%
That's
on a
right.
monthly basis. So, I mean, even though it didn't appreciate much, you would, if you had, I don't know if you've kept it all that time, your rents would probably have gone up to some degree, and you would have been cash flowing for 20 years or whatever it is. So it's there's pieces of that you can make some big impact with, again, a smaller property like that, or smaller from a numbers standpoint.
Yeah,
What?
that's where my first goal in real estate came about. So once I had that home, all right, so I had a $50,000 home and a third. All right, in my mind, if I can have $30,000 homes, I should be able to, and this is my thought, I should be able to retire comfortably. I didn't think of
Mhm.
it like I need to quit my job now. I actually like my job. But if I just kept acquiring $30,000 homes in
Yep.
30 years, they're all paid off, that sounds like a pretty good plan. I
Yep.
don't own any $30,000 homes anymore, though. So the
Yeah.
plan changed.
Well, and I think a lot of us, that is the plan to start with. You're like, oh, I do one smaller deal, and you're like, okay, if I did this 10, 20, 30 times, whatever it is, I'm in a really good position. And like, that's actually still a really good plan if you can find a way to buy a rental once a year, twice a year, once every other year, whatever that is, and continue that process over time. You are growing a real estate portfolio that over time you can retire on it. Like you said, a lot of people get that, if once you do one or two or three, they get that itch and they just keep going. So it sounds like that's what happened with you. What happened kind of there from after these two houses?
So the third house I purchased, I was like, okay, I learned my lesson. Maybe I shouldn't buy a house that needed so much rehab. So my next home I purchased for 23,000, and I put 7,000 into it. And after it was all done, it was worth 30,000 again. Like it,
Yeah.
even though I was like, I know, I learned, I'll do it, but I still, again, I didn't understand the relationship of the value to the, it just wasn't there. It was clicking in. Like I did learn some lessons, but I wasn't done learning at all. It took a while to get there. And then '08 happened. So when '08 happened, my wife and I remember I was married at this time. I wasn't married, earlier on, but um, we did not own a home yet. When we got married, we asked everybody to gift us money to buy a home. That was in our goal. And '08 occurred. Prices of homes were going down. And I distinctly remember my wife and I looking at each other like, hey, this might be a good time to buy. Home values probably won't go down much more. Wrong, wrong, wrong. So '08 was probably the worst time to buy, maybe the second worst time to buy. But
Yep.
we went out and bought our home and our new home, which we bought with the intention to live in it and then rent it after we moved out. So we knew this was not a forever home. I mean, we're young, this is not going to be a forever home. But the home that we were going to buy, we wanted it to be a rental. Okay, cool. So we bought it, and we bought it for $132,000, Jason. 130. I'm twice the value of my
Yep.
previous home, you know?
Stepping
So
up. Yeah.
I'm way up there now. But what's crazy about that time when we went to go get approved for a mortgage, you know, the mortgage person that we sat across the table from said, "Hey, well, you know, you can afford more than 130." And my wife, we know we did the budget thing, and we just feel like, you know, we know we can go a little higher than 130, but 130. She was, and the mortgage person, she was like, "No, you can afford 380. Let me show you how." And and we were like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. No, no, no. Whatever you're about to show me, I can't afford 380. I can only afford 130."
Yeah.
And I still think about this because that person was a person of authority. You
Mhm.
know, they were an expert. They were in that desk telling us how to buy and borrow. And luckily, I had an education. I don't know. I knew how to do math,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's how close we were to not getting into a healthy mortgage. That could have been really bad. So anyway, we got a reasonable mortgage that amortized, that paid off after 30 years,
Yeah.
even though our $130,000 home or $135,000 home, it just fell to the earth. Like it was worth 130, then 110, then 90, then 80. Like it didn't stop for
Yeah.
5 years. It just kept going down, 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 and then but here's the thing: like we never sold it because our intention was to rent it.
Right.
So we were just going to continue to rent it. And that's what
Yeah.
we did. So we never lost money, and we only sold it just last year, Jason, just last year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's real estate. It does forgive itself if you hang on to it long enough.
Yeah. Yeah. You haven't lost any money. I mean, realistically, on almost any investment until you have to exit. So it's kind of the same. I mean, same thing in the stock market. We just had a bit of a tumultuous week here, and at the time of this recording, and it's like, okay, well, I guess I'm not selling this week. That's
Yeah.
fine. You know, you just kind of hang on, and you do the same thing with real estate. You mentioned that mortgage broker telling you could afford that, and I mean, ultimately, you basically just described why the crash happened in 2008, because they were effectively just not just allowing people to have mortgages that were unrealistic. They were almost encouraging it. It was like, oh yeah, you don't have to put any money down. Oh, actually, we'll give you some money when you when you close on this house. You're like, wait, I can have a house and you're gonna give me $5,000-$10,000? Like stuff like that was happening very frequently. And again, it's like if you were lucky enough to have sold something in 2006, you probably did really, really well on that. You know, if you had something for a few years in there, but it's just the point to remember is real estate should be looked at as a long-term game. And you said, you just sold that house now a year later, and so I'm assuming that over time that worked out well for you despite that big drop, kind of right after purchase.
That's right. And I hope the people that listen to this podcast understand that this is not a get rich quick scheme. Like this is real estate. It takes time.
Yeah.
Like I certainly like the stock market, and I've even got a little bit of crypto, but the vast majority of my wealth is in real estate. Through the history of time, people need a place to live. You know, commodities come and go. I mean, tulips used to be a commodity at one point in our history.
Yeah. Yeah.
So real estate will be there for a while, and this is how you create generational wealth. And for my like doing the BRRRR method, this is how I take a small amount of money because I never had any money anyway. So I took a small amount of money to leverage it into more money. Like I can certainly put $10 in the stock market, and when it goes to $20, that's awesome. That's 100% return.
Mm-hmm.
But real estate, I can put in 8,000 and get 80,000. That's a huge difference. It's
Yeah.
hard, very hard, and it takes time, but it's certainly possible to do.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a higher barrier to entry in the real estate in real estate investing than there is in the stock market, which I think is probably a lot of why some people aren't familiar with their ability to invest, even as a passive investor, into real estate. But the reality is, if you want to actually change your life, you kind of have to think bigger about it. So it's like, yeah, I can buy one share of Apple, but what's really going to help you is if you buy 100 shares of Apple or 1,000 shares of Apple, if you want to talk about it in stocks or in real estate, same thing, like turning that money, turning those deals into, much bigger money over time. Um, so what has been your strategy since then? So, I mean, we talked about these first few houses, and essentially, single family BRRRRs or rentals, and did you stick with that, or what have you done, kind of over time with your portfolio?
Yeah, I'm super boring, man. Super boring. I still do the same thing. I just got really good at this one little technique. And
Yeah.
to this day, I buy off market properties in a state of disrepair, fix them up, and rent them. I do part of the process is I sell my older homes or ones that aren't performing as well. I
Yeah.
do identify them because now a lot of them have equity in them that I can sell one to buy two. Sometimes that happens. But yeah, I'm still doing the same old boring rental property BRRRR method,
Mhm.
and it's fine. I'm fine.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a great strategy. So just so people understand, you said I sell one and buy two. Why can you
Mm.
do that?
Okay. So like, let's take those $30,000 homes for example. There's never any appreciation. Like you can still go out. You can go out into rural areas or in very tough neighborhoods and find properties that are very low value that you can rent for a high percentage of the value. Like I have a lot of real estate investor friends who do mobile homes.
Mhm.
Their rents are higher, but their properties depreciate. They go down in
Yeah.
value. It's
Yeah.
just a different technique, right? So if I identify there's a home that's not performing, like a $30,000 home, I would sell the home and use that money as leverage to buy a better performing asset. So
Mhm.
the home that we sold last year, that we bought in '08, I used the money to buy a quad, a fourplex. So I had a one 2-bedroom townhouse that I rented for 15 years and bought a quad, a $500,000 quad with. So now
Yeah.
my quadplex in a few years will be worth X, and I could leverage that into other things as well. So it's not like it's not a competition or a race. It's important that you buy things that you feel comfortable with, but you should not even compare yourself against what I'm saying. I'm doing it for 20 years. You can't like you need to start at your story beginning, where you originate from. This is kind of where I talk about house hacking is such a good starting place for so many people,
Yeah.
or buying your own primary home is so good for so many people because it's the lowest out of pocket, the least risk. I mean, you got a contract, you get it inspected, like the interest rate's the lowest. It's everything's there that can support you being a boring real estate investor, which is what I like. I like boring because boring is safe. I'm not a big
Yeah.
risk taker.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how I take one asset and leverage it or sell it to buy a better performing asset.
Yeah. No, it's a great point, and you kind of used the word I wanted maybe people to understand is leverage. And a lot of times when you're buying I believe it's below 50,000, you can't use a loan, or maybe you can't use your traditional source of lending. And so, but as you get into your quad and stuff, then now you take that money and you put down whatever it is, 20-30%. Now you're using leverage to buy something that's got 4 units instead of one. And it's there are so many little um, nuances that you can use in real estate investing. Even, you say boring, but it's like, what's boring about being financially independent? Like, I don't that's that's not boring. That makes, rest of life pretty interesting. And however you get to that point is like, the end goal is financial independence. The recipe to get there just depends on what fits with your life, your skill set, your interests, that kind of thing. And I think it's just kind of, I think it's going to depend on when you got into real estate investing, right? Like it's, depending on where the market is and things like that. But I think you're a perfect example of there's all kinds of different ways to do this. We talk a lot about syndication on the podcast because I do that, but like I've also done the single family thing and did that for 20 years before I moved into syndication. So it's like there's just no shortage of ways to get ahead using real estate as the vehicle, which I guess is what I hope people would understand.
Yeah, and I do feel strongly about how I invest. I do. And if you listen to people talk about real estate, you might feel their passion too. Like, no, this is the way you got to do it, and that
Right.
don't hold it against them. They
Yeah.
just became successful doing it that way.
Yeah.
But your way might be a little different, and that's okay. Like,
Yep.
even though you may not do exactly how I do it, I almost encourage you not to do it how I did it. I hope you make better
Yep.
decisions than I did in the beginning.
Right.
Um, but I do feel passionately about it because I had no money, man, no money, and now I'm a millionaire. I can barely say it. It's
Yeah.
weird. It's
Yeah.
weird. So if somebody like me who had very little education and no money, and you're going to make better decisions than me, you're going to be fine. If you just do this, you will be fine. And if you do some other things, maybe that's okay too. But there are a lot of distractions though too. A lot of distractions.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people trying to sell things that if you've been doing it for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
we get to talk a little bit about gurus, because we've been
Yeah.
around the block a little bit, and they can take a little bit of a bashing. Like if they're good, they don't care. They know how
Right.
to be good.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who aren't that good. So I would always encourage people to continue to learn. Like in a platform like this is a great learning mechanism. And trust your instincts. Trust your instincts when it comes to
Yeah.
making a decision.
Yeah. Agree 100%. And you mentioned earlier that, at that time that you started, there was no access to information, right? You go to the library
Yeah.
and take out a book that's 8 years old, that kind of thing. It really wasn't. I remember I bought similar thing. I bought a house, lived in it, house hacked, whatever you want to call it, renovated virtually all of it myself. And there was no YouTube. I was buying books from Home Depot or whatever. And like,
Yeah,
I
man.
was doing that and I was working for contractors. So I just figured it out, right? And that's
That's right.
what got me ahead. Now you can't say that the information is not available. It's everywhere, but sometimes that's equally as hard because now you have to filter out all the noise and find out who's actually who's, you talked about the gurus, who's trustworthy, who can I believe, two, who's doing what I want to do, right? Because there's going to be multiple gurus that are doing each specific type, strategy in real estate investing. There's going to, and I, when I say gurus, I mean the ones that we all think of negatively. You're absolutely right. People that are doing it right, they're not worried about being called that because they know they're doing it right. The, but the training
That's right.
programs that are out there, there's a million of them. Finding the right one for you, for what you want to do in real estate is really challenging, and a lot of them come with costs and things like that. I always encourage people to find a way, especially if you're young and don't have money, which is where it sounds like where both you and I started. Go find someone to work for. Go find, like, if you're interested in that, go find someone who's a real estate investor or a builder or something to just get around real estate, get around people that are in that space. And it's, you know, property managers, whatever, anything, again, property managers, contractors, uh, brokers, like there's all kinds of different people in the space that can help you as well as other investors. So it's all really available, but it can be overwhelming.
Jason, so like I described in the beginning, my uncle was the one who was like the example for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
I never went to him. I don't know why. I never even asked a single question to
Yep.
him. Maybe it's just my personality. I like to do it. Maybe there's something to that. But now you can certainly ask a question and get it answered.
Mm.
Um, you know,
Yep.
there's no doubt a level of education that you can get without paying anybody on the internet and through your friends and through real estate groups that are local to you. There's so many
Yeah.
more resources. If this is what you feel like you should be doing, you can do it. you can absolutely get this done.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think there's a lot of ways to get involved, as we said, but it's yeah, the point is just get involved, do something to get yourself in there, and there's gonna be, you're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna have deals go bad. It's okay.
Don't
Like,
say mistake. You're going to scare everybody away.
yeah.
But that's the
None of us
reality
ever
of it.
none of us have ever made a mistake. No,
We've never made any mistakes. Yeah. I wish I could make
it's
more mistakes.
yeah, it's those mistakes will teach you the most. I mean, the number of
Yeah.
times the number of times I was at, Home Depot or Lowe's at 11 o'clock at night because I was trying to do plumbing on my own and I didn't do it right, and I've got another fitting that's leaking and all of this. Like, it's just like that. I learned I'm not a plumber, right? Like, there's a lot I like about construction. It's not plumbing, right? And that's just one of a million examples of things that I found out I don't do well, and what I can, ask for help for, find someone who does do well. And it's just taking a shot and doing stuff. So it's kind of, it's just about taking some level of action and being okay with it not working out perfectly every time, because it's not gonna. That's at least that's, if there's someone who's listening and has had it gone perfect every step of the way, please come on the show so I can hear all about that. It would be great for everybody to learn from that experience, I guess. But no, I mean, that's it. That's having the experiences and then finding the community to ask questions and talk to people about it is really kind of all it takes. So I appreciate that perspective a lot.
Do you just do syndications now?
Currently, yes. Part of that's just a time thing.
Sure. Yeah.
When my kids are young, they're 5 and 3, and when my kids get older, I 100% intend to like flip houses with them, or whether it's flip or BRRRR or whatever. I just, those, I enjoy it. That's one like I really do enjoy. I can build a house. I'll hire the plumber, but I can build a house. And I just, I think it's not necessarily that they need to be able to do all of those skills themselves, but maybe understanding how it all goes together. Like, even in syndication, as an asset and construction manager, my 20 plus years of experience around construction helps a ton. Like, it helps me just communicate with the even if I'm not swinging the hammer anymore. And one, I can, if I if I need to. It's like, all right, give me that, I'll help. Or like, I just know how to talk that language and get I guess if you look at it from a negative side, protect against getting taken advantage of. I just, kind of in understanding that, it's like the flip side to that would be cars. I told you I can build a house. I know nothing about cars. I can't fix a car at all. I don't know if every time I take my truck in for service, they're telling me the truth that I need X done along with the oil change. Like, I don't know. I hope that they're telling me the truth, but it's kind of like, I got to put my faith in them. If I was building a fleet of cars or owned a fleet of vehicles, I can sure as hell tell you I would want to know more about what was going into that, sort of from a maintenance and repair standpoint. So it's just understanding enough to protect yourself. And if you like framing, which I do, then like, let's go build a house together. Like, that kind of thing is just fun to me. So that's currently, syndication is the main focus. But yeah, I love the idea of building a portfolio of smaller assets with my family for them to have long after I'm gone.
I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas, so this is a pretty big city. There are several real estate groups that meet in town. Over here that way, Meetup or Eventbrite, they show them. And most of my contractors and hard money lenders, insurance people, have exclusively come from these groups. Not because I even met them there, but because I spoke to another investor and said, hey, who are you using these days? Um, so usually working with, just being around other investors in that capacity, you'll learn who the good people are. And that nothing's foolproof, but it significantly deters your risk factor down because you're working with somebody that's a referral, that has history. I'll still even refer out contractors that I don't use anymore because I know my own people now, but they did such good work for me. Like if you're out of state, you need to
Mhm.
call this guy because he will
Right.
absolutely perform. So even throughout the relationships, you create these networks for yourself that help out with your own side hustle, or maybe if you're bold enough, this is your full time gig. But yeah, your network is really important, not just because of relationships, but because of the people that you employ as a part of your job too.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely agree. And yeah, those referrals are just huge, especially any vendor, but I think contractors, if you can get a good contractor referral, because they can be hard to find, it's you know I, fortunately I don't think most people are going to send you unless you've wronged them, they're not going to send you a bad contractor. So if
That's
you
right.
can get them to let you use their contractor, that's probably a big deal. um, yeah, I think it's a hugely important piece of that puzzle, and it's just, again, it goes back to that getting around people that are doing what
Hmm.
you do, and that'll really get you in the right direction. Um, Andrew, let me switch gears here. I want to ask you the questions I ask every guest. The first one, of course, being from the name of the show, is Know Your Why. I always like to ask every guest, what is your why? What is kind of keeps you going, keeps you excited about what you're doing?
Yeah, I like the ability to compete. I'm a competitive person by nature. So if I can compete and be financially stable at the same time, I love that piece. Competition and financial stability every day. That's what I dwell on.
What are this is not one of the normal four questions, but it's an interesting answer to me. When you say you want to compete, what do you mean?
Hmm.
What are you competing with? What's that in reference to?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I don't know where it came from, man, but um, if I do not have a place of like high priority in my everyday life, I have to get higher. If it comes by recognition or like I just want to like like I've run my booster club like right from my college here in town. I went to Florida State. I ran the Seminole Booster Club here. Absolutely every day I dwelled on how to make this place better, how to get it right. Um, in my job, it's the same thing. I have to take what I have and create it or make it better. Either create it into something that's incredible or make it better. Maybe it was something that was instilled in me as a kid. Like my parents always talked about being a good steward. So to me, that definition can mean different things. But to me, I feel like that means I've got to make things better or leave them in a better place than where I found them. So that might be some of where that competitive piece comes from. But
Yeah.
yeah, I absolutely dwell on that every day.
Well, that sounds like competition with yourself, which I think is what I, I I find that's what makes a lot of successful people successful. It's just that bit of that competitive fire within themselves. Yet, sure, like there are opportunities to maybe compete with someone else if it's like, oh, I want to win this deal over someone else or whatever. But ultimately, you're just trying to make yourself and everything around you better, like competing with yesterday. So I just think maybe I'm way off base here, but that's kind of what that sounds like to me. Is that
That's where it is now. Okay, so early in my life, it was like I want to smash my competition too.
yeah,
But I've learned
yeah,
like, hey, that's not really that healthy to think that way about people.
sure,
Luckily, I've evolved my mentality a little bit. But yeah, even in the military, man, it was all about like your chain is only as strong as your weakest link. So you focus on making the weakest link stronger to make the chain better. In the military, it's different because your life is depending on other people around you. Like you will die
right,
if it's not
right,
done right.
yeah,
But it's also a trap too, man. I will say when you dwell on the mistakes, you try to fix the mistakes. That's not quite. it's not quite right, because then your thought gets trapped in this negative space about how things are going wrong when there's so many things that are right.
Mhm.
So it took me a little bit to understand that where my headspace was in a very dark place, and it's taken a lot of work to get me out of that. So I still have it there. I want to improve and be better, but I don't want to hurt anybody doing it. And I want to
Yeah.
make sure that I emphasize about how good my life is. Even though I do want to improve it, I just focus on it in the right way now rather than focusing on the negative side of it. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Oh yeah.
that's where it
Yeah.
came from.
Yeah. I think I'm a huge sports fan, and I think the psychology of sports and the psychology of business and entrepreneurship in a lot of ways are the same.
Yeah.
You know, high performing individuals in whatever, and I think it is there's some that competitiveness, whether that's within yourself, with others. There's some level of darkness and avoiding that darkness, you know, sort of trying to pull yourself out of it. So I do think that there's a lot of that goes along with it. So it's just I'm I don't mean to harp on it. I just actually find it really fascinating myself, that kind of mindset around success. So it's pretty interesting for me to hear.
I often listen to other people talk about their success, and the more successful they are, all they seem to remember are the bad things. Oh, we didn't get this deal done. I'm
Right,
like, you're a billionaire, dude. What are you even doing
right,
talking
right.
about that thing? But
Yeah, yeah,
even the extremely successful people still focus on the things that went wrong.
yeah, yeah. I've heard people say, like, you know, billionaires just have bigger problems.
It's,
That's the difference, and it's like that doesn't sound like a great a great way to look at it. But yeah, I mean, it's
yeah.
true. You're gonna have bigger problems at that level. So when people hear this and they want to reach out to you, what's the best way?
Oh, okay, sure. So I'm on the Facebook, I'm on the internet, I'm on the Instagram. Andrew Postell. My last name is spelled Postell. I have a website. If you just Google Andrew Postell, I'm a loan officer now. I didn't even cover this. So remember how I told you about the loan officer that didn't do well?
Yeah.
I took that to heart. So I've been really focused on that piece of me. So if you just look up Andrew Postell as a loan officer, and my personal cell phone, 904-718-6878. You can reach out anytime. Here to help.
Perfect. And looks like you even have TikTok.
I
We'll put
do.
this stuff in the in the show notes so people can find you for sure. My last question for you: what piece of advice would you give to someone who wants to get started in real estate? And I know we've touched on this some, but I wanted to see if you had anything to add to that. You know, kind of someone listening to this, they're inspired by your story, and they're kind of thinking, what do I do next?
Yeah, I would give you two homework assignments. Two. Okay, the first one, see if there is a real estate group close to you. Go to meetup.com, go to Eventbrite, go to BiggerPocket, see if you can find a group of like minded real estate investors in your area and go network with them and learn from them. You'll learn more in those settings than most other places. But I want to preface one thing. Some of these places want to charge you big bucks. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about friendly people that get together. There's plenty of them out there. You can even use Facebook. I know. On Facebook, you can do your state. I live in Texas, so I wanted to research real estate investment groups. Texas, there are several, and you can just hang out in there. And people, hey, anybody want to grab coffee on Tuesday? Like it's a lonely industry investing in real estate. It
Yeah.
seems like so many people do it. They do not. So get out there and try to meet with groups or get connected with groups. And the second piece, I would say, Jason, the easiest thing for people to do if you're interested in single family investing is to get pre-qualified with a lender. It is completely free. They can usually do it at worst with a soft credit check. Usually they can tell you without that. But then you can understand what the payment is, how much money you need. You can do this with a hard money lender too. What are your terms? How do I get this? I don't even have a property yet. How do I do numbers without a property? At least you'll know the loan steps. You'll know the buy step and the refinance step of the BRRRR method. So learning how my numbers interplay with my single family investing will help. Those are the two homework assignments say. Connect with a real estate group and get pre-qualified.
Yeah, love it, love it. I think, yeah, and not having a property. I mean, it is. I think to add to that, people could create an example property, right? Like, this is what I think
Yeah.
I want. Here it is,
Mhm.
look on Zillow or whatever. Or if, especially with like a hard money lender, you find out the terms. How much am I going to have to, how much cash out of pocket am I going to have based
Yes.
on X dollars? And what am I comfortable with, right? If you have, you know, $20,000 to put into your BRRRR, you're not going to buy a $2 million house. Like, that's so you can find out what those things, what those numbers look like, and then help settle into your comfort zone for yourself. So it allows you to sort of like reverse engineer that math.
Yeah. Just feeling like if we gave you the right information, could you make a decision? Of course. So these steps just help you get the right information so you know how to make a decision on what to do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Andrew, this is great. Thank you for coming on the show today. Thank you for everything that you shared. I think people, there's a lot of really actionable stuff here. So I do appreciate it. I appreciate your time. So happy that you could join me.
Thanks for even having me, Jason. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks listening, make sure you connect with Andrew. We'll have all of his socials in the show notes, and he gave you a cell phone, so you can give him a call. Thank you all for listening. Please like, rate, and review the show so we can get more great guests. Take care.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?